Signs of a bad warm-up regulator. If you don't know what this is, then you probably don't have a 380 or 450 SL or 450 SEL or 280 SE or one of those cars that used K-Jetronic injection. So before KE Jetronic with the EHA valve and the electronic control and the oxygen sensor, there was K-Jetronic, which used the fuel distributor and this guy, the warm-up regulator, to moderate fuel pressures. Now, warm-up regulators are a funny thing because what they do, you see this plug on the top, what they do is they use a little electric current to heat up a bimetallic thermosensitive piece of metal, a little spring, if you will, but not a coil spring. Just a flat piece of metal spring that makes minute adjustments to a valve inside the warm-up regulator here, where this is the input from the fuel distributor, and then this is the discharge, and there's moderation of the internal working pressure, the pressure that's delivered to the fuel injectors through this part. Now, if that little bimetallic spring goes bad, or the little valve that is moderated by the bimetallic spring gets stuck or contaminated, or the little diaphragm here in the bottom, there's actually a diaphragm in the bottom here. If those guys develop an issue, then you will have some very strange running problems with your 450 or 380 or similar Mercedes. Now, this K system was in use on all the V8 cars starting in September of 1975 and going to August of 1985 when the 380 and 500 were replaced with the 420 and 560 models. This system was also used on the 280E SE, SEL, 280CE, 280TE, starting in 1977 and then all the way to 85. And yes, it includes European versions of the cars. It was also used on the M102 engine, where it had no vacuum inputs, famously. It had no vacuum input from the engine whatsoever, and it would continue on 123 series cars equipped with the M102 engine until the end of 85, but it was never used on the 190E. Now, what does this thing actually do wrong? What can go wrong with it? And we find that the problems that go wrong usually involve fuel contamination, or the bimetallic strip losing its ability to function, which happens after maybe the car sat for a long time, or the diaphragms inside rupturing because of either age or corrosion. But how do these play out in the way that the car runs? Well, the first way that they play out is that oftentimes the 14 millimeter port will not be able to discharge excess pressure to this other little 12 millimeter port here. And I say that because of the nut sizes that go in here, by the way, not because of the inner diameters. And so what we find is that the pressure that comes from the fuel distributor gets backed up, builds up too much pressure in the fuel distributor, and the plate can't go down. So the car will either not idle, or it will become difficult to start, difficult to idle. You'll get a bunch of black smoke. The car will run extremely rich because the extra fuel pressure has nowhere to go. Now, one of the other interesting parts about this system is that you can have vacuum issues as well. So this system uses a large port up here, which is connected to the idle. This is an early fuel distributor. It's stamped 015, but it started life as an 025, a 04381400 2.5, and they go up here at the top. And this thing did not work very well at all because it was the wrong warm-up regulator. Sorry, I think I said the word fuel distributor earlier. It was the wrong warm-up regulator for the car it was on, which was a 450 SLC. So somebody tried to make this into something it wasn't. But when we look at these vacuum ports, we're always looking for good, unobstructed vacuum supply, because the vacuum supply uses a diaphragm to moderate the richness of the engine. And the diaphragm sort of takes over and does some of the adjusting work of the warm-up regulator based on how hard you push your throttle to the floor. When you push your throttle to the floor, there's less manifold vacuum, there's less vacuum acting on the warm-up regulator, car runs richer. Now on later versions of this part, this giant port was moved down here and took its input from a big vacuum supply port on the side of the on the passenger side of the intake manifold. And we find that when this port is compromised, either with a broken vacuum line or the wrong size vacuum line, it's got to have a big thick vacuum line. It can't have a little itty bitty 3 millimeter line. It has to have like a 6.5 millimeter line. If it doesn't get all that nice vacuum, the engine will run too rich. It'll run really rough and shaky and black smoke and nasty, and people will replace their warm-up regulator wondering, and then they find out that the connector on the intake is bad, or they have low intake vacuum, because of other problems. So you have to make sure that your intake vacuum is good if you want your warm-up regulator to work right. We always say 15 inches in drive, that's the magic number. Doesn't matter where else you look, but you need 15 inches in drive on those cars. Now, another thing that goes wrong is there's a little screen in here, and if the screen gets plugged up, you get the same thing. Car runs too rich. Car runs very lumpy. And oftentimes, if you have a rebuilt fuel distributor and you've cleaned your tank out and everything else is working right, but the car doesn't want to run well and has too much lumpiness in the idle and is fouling plugs, this is where you go. Now, here's the funny part about this warm-up regulator. You guys want to hear the joke about this thing? Here's how I really knew it was bad. It has a Volkswagen Audi symbol on the side. Now, what is this doing on a Mercedes? I don't know, but I also know it was spray painted because this is supposed to be like a gray color, the steel insert. And these are supposed to be yellow zinc or rust. Again, it's been painted. You see the tops of the screws are silver. So somebody thought that they could repurpose a warm-up regulator from a Volkswagen for a Mercedes 450 SLC, and it didn't work very well. The car barely ran. It had no power, wouldn't get out of its own way. Beautiful car that I think was sold for a significantly lower than market number just because of this one part. And the ending to that problem wrapped up because I had a new old stock warm-up regulator that was correct for the car on my shelf. I put it on, fired the car up, car ran great. Idled it cold at 1500 RPM instead of 500. So this will really kill your idle if it's too bad. It'll make the car idle really low. Okay guys, well I hope you guys liked that video and I hope you found it informative. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications. And we'll see you in the future in the next video. Come here for some great Mercedes advice. If you're a Patreon supporter, thank you so much. We really appreciate you.